Hello, 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 and welcome to another intermittent code fun. I am One Lion, and I have been streaming intermittently. Speaking of streaming intermittently, we have Scott, Dukesoft, Deflux. Speaking of streaming intermittently, I will have a short stream today. Because reasons. Hello, Zuris. And that's it. Yeah. So I guess two options. You guys can either sit here and stare at me while I do my work, or we can work on the application together for an hour and then move on. And then I'll move on to getting the stuff done that I need. Thanks for the stream. I'll move on to getting the stuff done that I need for a meeting that's going to happen in 30 minutes after I normally end streaming. So I'm giving myself an extra hour. So I'll have an hour and a half to finish everything up. What's in my background? We are looking out a window somewhere in Birmingham City Centre in the UK. It is England. I knew it. Said Cerise. You live there. Awesome. Can we see your house from here? Yeah, this place looks familiar. Is it anywhere? Well, I have no idea if it looks familiar. I'm going to sneakily. Am I going to sneakily bring up a browser window? Birmingham Center. Maps. How close are you to London? Looks kind of far. Very far. Okay. So no, doesn't look familiar. I was in London and I was walking along I walked everywhere while I was visiting London. Um, and there were tons and tons of places that look like this kind of street. Shops lined up against the street with all these colorful windows and views, and yeah, it's much cool. You see a guy laying down somewhere in the street. Zuris, what are you doing laying down in the middle of the street? That's not safe. Oh, this traffic though. He lives there. It's very safe. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I have a ton of screenshots and stuff to make for the progress of the application. Just chilling for the application that I'm working on. It's been really interesting. Uh, I mentioned it to my lead today because there has been a lot of here's the priority work on this. Oh, and by tomorrow's meeting, later there's a call that's by tomorrow's meeting have these screenshots available and have this effort updated, like create some mock-ups of these screens. And it's like, but I'm actively working on fully implementing these screens and pages and functionality. So do you want me to drop that and work on this? Yeah. Drop that and get started on these. Okay. Then those are not going to be ready. I will work on this. Okay, cool. And then a week later, or not a week later, it was like 2 days later, he calls me and he's like, so about the getting these screens completely ready for today's meeting. I'm like, I dropped those so that I could work on this other thing. Well, get those ready and then finish up the other thing and have them both ready for today. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Currently, I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 user stories assigned to me. That are moved to active, right? They're not just assigned to me, they're actually moved to active. Yay. Just do image source equals screenshot one. I have the actual app up that I'm working on. The problem is that I don't know if you remember, but when I started this job, I was working in my own project, in my own repo, and I mocked everything up. Or does that include the commercial view? I think it might include the commercial view. So I mocked everything up, and so when I moved it over to Figma, when I moved it over to the actual application, I took out all of the mock stuff and only left my UI. And so there are a bunch of places where there's no data populated and no information displaying that I could put into a screenshot. So I'm going back and forth between the two because then there's extra stuff that I worked on that I needed to have ready for mockups and stuff. Mouse, there you are. And so I got those screenshots. Or I have some new stuff in the current dev product. And then I have mocked data only in the mock repo that doesn't have some of these UI elements. and some of the stuff only ever existed in Figma in the designs. So I don't know. Because like we dropped a bunch of stuff, but we need to include it for putting a big X on it to say we dropped this. That's not fun. Not fun at all. But that's okay. So we're gonna get started. Here is my desktop. Hello, desktop. Here is an article on building volumetric UI using the MRTK. So I will say, I can't give much details about it, but yesterday, I do whatever makes you feel accomplished by the end of the day. Yeah, that kind of works, except that I have deliverables that I need to provide by the meeting today. Yeah, we should go back to two lines and finish your clone. That'd be nice. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, what we did yesterday was we created the logic, and we saw that it worked for adding a deposit and then having deposits queried and showing in the table. So let me bring up our running app, which is right here. And so for those of you not familiar, the project that we've been working on is a financial management tracker, which Dukasoft has kindly put the GitHub link. It is open source. It is out there, public, and available. This thing needs a name. I don't know why the account isn't showing up when I told it how to get the account, but that's okay. We can see that the most recent deposit that I added was this amount. Like it is still working, right? I think it's working. I mean, we know that it's a pending deposit. So I'm depositing into checking. We'll put a date of today. Regular paycheck, because that's the only thing that I have in deposit reason currently. And it'll be this amount. And I submit. And then it submits it, clears the form. It doesn't refresh this yet, but you can see that it shows up. So that works. It was interesting that sort didn't work right after I added a new deposit. It's very interesting. So what we're going to do then is get this table to refresh as soon as we do something with transactions. So whether that is adding a new transaction, updating an existing, or deleting one, which I think I went with soft delete in the end. I can't remember. We'll find out when we get there. The other thing that I would like to do is get our lookup service working. So we'll need to write some tests for getting our lookup items and then have that pull in our data. As soon as coffee is empty, refresh. Absolutely. That is 1,000,000% correct, Dukasoft. But yeah, what have you guys been working on lately? What have you been doing? I hope your Tuesdays and Thursdays are going fantastically and you're able to enjoy yourselves. Specifically Tuesdays and Thursdays. Because I know your weekends have already been going fantastic. And I know your Monday, Wednesday, Fridays have been going fantastic because we hang out together. Deflex says, I worked out a few things. We found out that our QA servers block certain protocols and collections. I don't know what collections means in this context. Oh, connections. Okay. And protocols is close enough. It's readable. And so it broke the Azure Service Bus. No, you're okay. Okay. But yeah. So it's the way that the servers themselves are configured. And I take it that that's not a concern that you would need. Mysterious code things. Oh my gosh. Hello, Razar Bazaar. I will type stuff. I will code stuff. My coding session for my RTS was GOOFY. 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 I was like, boom, had to force it to use TCP connection. So that was cool. And right now I'm looking at your code. Why are you looking at my code? Don't look at that garbage. Zuri says, I have real problems organizing my code for my projects. I don't. I like using solution folders to organize. The thing that happened recently is I adopted a new, not really a new, for my work product, since I'm working on a team, I had to use a different approach for my solutions folder. I still prefer having my folder structure be like this. And then for the actual on disk, I didn't do it with this app, but I really want to. But I normally also structure the folders on disk to match my solution folder structure. So I would have an apps folder that has my Maui, Blazor server, and shared server, API Blazor server and Maui. or how everything links up. So more like project dependencies. What is being coded right now? So Dukasoft gave us this link not too long ago, but the current project is a financial management tracker where you can just enter financial transactions and they'll be listed down here. Over here, you'll get a readout of all of the accounts that you have and their balances. Did you just wow at Automated Realms? Automated Realms is my bot. My bot. 50 tons of caffeine, and the thought my RTS game won't be played later. I made working interactable snow for my game. That's cool. That's really cool. Zuri said, should everything be a separate method? So when you are deciding how to architect the actual code, Automated Realm sure is wow. Don't make fun of Automated Realm. It's gonna be smart one day. Zuri, so architecting your code, so you'll get a feel for how granular to make your methods. The point is, you can adopt any number of programming practices that are all best practices. It's just that there are so many best practices that some of them overlap, and it's like it's either one or the other. You can't really do both in some cases. But in general, you want single responsibility for each method. It does one thing and it does one thing well. But then that could also lead to really, really, really deep method calls. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Feel free to share your code. Plus, remember that we have a Discord that has a lot of really smart people, people with a lot more experience with good architecture. I haven't studied architecture. I've picked up what I've picked up from people in the stream, from passively reading it and understanding. For sure, I won't still my hands if I get I won't still my hands if I get my code on it. I won't still my code if I get my hands on it. You will not get judged by me for the logic behind your code. I might judge you, but I will not do so in a mean way. I don't still hands either, but here we are. Says Razar Bazaar. Okay, while I'm waiting for that, I need to decide on which one we're going to do. Are we going to do the lookup list first, or are we going to do the trigger a refresh in our history based on new transactions? Get sorted transactions. And then transactions is set on initialize. So what I'll need to do is have a refresh transactions. And so like this here, because I am going to be reusing this same chunk of code, whoa, I'm going to accidentally finger spaz and push some characters. Because I'm going to reuse this, I'm going to take it out and put it, oh my gosh. Apparently I need this entire thing. I'm going to take this out and put it into its own method called refresh transactions. Private async task refresh. Transactions. Do I know how to spell? Not async anymore. However, I am going to need a couple more things in here. Okay, Zuri's pasted his code, their code. Okay, and so what are we looking at specifically? Like one thing that I see right off the bat is that you don't have any classes in separate folders. And so the thing that you usually want at the root of your project is program.cs, and that's about it. So if we look at something like query save.cs and designer, so this is a WPF app, or is it WinForms? It looks like WinForms. Oh, it is WPF. It's WinForms. Yeah, WinForms. Deflux. It's okay, Deflux. It's okay. So yeah, anyway, I don't mind, like, first thing that I like to look at is what the code looks like on screen. Like squint your eyes, look at it blurrily, and find out if there's just weirdness. Is it readable? So these extra indents for your if statement, that's kind of weird. So those should all be lined up. If you're going to do curly braces on new lines, they're usually in line with the first column of code that they belong with. So just do a control KD and that should fix it. This is weird. This is weird. As far as the content inside of each method, again, it's another case where you squint and does it look like there's a lot of stuff happening in one place? Control KD. Man, I don't like FinForms. I like WinForms. I like WinForms a lot. I used to only want to do dev work in WinForms. I was afraid of doing stuff in the web. And then I found the joy of it was MVC at the time, because of course web forms, bleh, I didn't want to do anything with that. But MVC I understood and it made sense to me and I enjoyed doing it. And now Blazor is just, I don't want to do anything else, which will change eventually. But right now I love Blazor. I keep scrolling. Fun says WinForms is so fun. Deflex is like, no, it will not. You will always be doing Blazor. Do not abandon the Blazor train. I didn't say I was going to abandon it. I said that the mindset of I only want to do Blazor is going to change, especially since I'm going into, oh yeah, permission granted, Razar. I'm going to be going into XRDev very soon. And I know I say that a lot, but I was going to tell you about that. So I'll tell you in a minute after I'm done looking at this. When you're looking at code to determine or do you need to split stuff up into separate methods, is this chunk of work here like logically separate from the rest of the code? If it is, then you can move this chunk of code into a method. Also, if you are finding yourself writing the same logic repeatedly, that's an indication that that logic should be put into its own method as well. So like here, it looks like depending on the property that we clicked on, you're going to do something that has nothing to do with anything else inside of the rest of this method. So this could be its own method because you're not reusing any internal variables here. And anything that you might be using, like E, you could pass to that method. Yeah, exactly. So because each column has its own separate logic, all you should have to do if you're using Visual Studio is select this, right-click, extract method, and then name it. And it'll help you with setting up all of the parameters and everything that you need to pass in. Data grid should be available everywhere. Well, because data grid view is a control on the form itself, then it will be available to any other method inside of the code behind for the form. And yeah, what Juan Van is saying is once you start getting too many parameters, you might consider making the list of parameters into one class. I remember, Razar says, I remember I once actually tried to make a site which was all about this emote, the cat in glasses emote. Seeing code as a user makes me feel smart. As a UE5 user. Unreal. Unreal. Yeah, so in this case, I'm going to say that I'm pretty sure that data grid belongs to the query save form. Because there is nothing else outside of this that's assigning data grid view 1. Oh, Razar. There's some other class somewhere that declares it. But at least in the context of this code right here, this entire class, data grid 1 is being accessed without needing in any of these methods at all. So that's just to let you know you won't need to pass data grid anywhere. You will have access. You will have access to that in whatever other method you use. So that would be step 1. Step 1 is to take all of the logic in each of these branches and extract them to a method and name that method some action verb about what that method does. So here it's something like prompt for save location, or yeah, show save file dialog, or do save file. I don't know. Something like that. And then this one would be similar to show open dialog. And this one is execute something or other. And then this one is show settings or something like that. So create a method out of all of those. The next thing that you'll see is when your code is shortened, you're going to have a if this here, this thing here, which is reused over and over and over, is equal to some value, In this case, we call these here magic strings that you're using, but is equal to some value, else if it's equal to some other value, else if it's equal to some other value. If you see yourself reusing the same property and comparing it against different values, that would be an indication that you might want to use a switch. So here you would use switch property name and then case browse save, run this method, case browse load, run this method, case run this method, and case settings. Did that one make sense? Hello, Scott and Xcoding. Welcome, welcome in. Hope you're having great days. Awesome, it does make sense. And then the final thing is, I'm not exactly sure how you're assigning the property names, but if they are something like hard-coded property names that come from the data that is populating your grid, and you have access to that, then you might use something like name of, and then that property name from wherever it comes from. Here it just looks like you're reading in a file and displaying in a data grid, so I doubt that. Otherwise, these are just extra columns that you might be adding yourself. And if you control the names of those, yeah, just a small one. If you control the names of those, then in order to get rid of magic strings, you could either create a data structure for your additional classes, additional properties, or you could create something like an enum for those additional columns. And that way, if you ever decide to change the name of it, it'll update everywhere. Here you would be relying on yourself to know, I changed the name of this data property, so I would need to go to everywhere that uses data property name and update that one. So if I call this, instead of browse underscore save, I called it browse save without the underscore, then I would need to go everywhere and update it to browse save. But yeah, if you do it this other way, when you change the enum, you would do a rename refactor on the enum, and that would automatically update everywhere that you're using it. Same thing with if you're using a data structure, if you're using a class, you're renaming the property, and then the usage of that gets renamed everywhere. Yeah, so rename refactor, if you're in Visual Studio, I think Visual Studio Code has it as well, and I'm sure Writer does. If you right click on any of your properties or variable names, like if you looked at string file here, and you right click on that, you would get an option for refactor or something like that, and then one of them is rename, which might actually be up close to the top since it's so common. You click rename, type in the new name, and it updates the variable name and everywhere that it's used. The one keyboard shortcut is Control RR. Another one is F2. I can actually show you it. It's right here. So rename, you can see transaction right here, but I'm renaming this variable name here, and I'm putting a 2 at the end, and you can see it's updating immediately. And that works on variables, that works on class names, that works on properties. It works on enum members. Scott didn't know that. I'm sorry. Yeah, like here's an instance of me comparing to an enum. Oh, thank you so much, Cerise. You didn't have to do that. I just wanted to help. That's all. Let's say that I wanted to spell this out as descending. You'll see that wherever I am using that enum, the property or the enum member name. But yeah, thank you so much for that. You guys really don't have to subscribe because I'll be streaming probably less often still with all of the stuff that's going on. Like I'm only going to go for another 25 minutes today because I want to get back to creating the screenshots so that I do what I said I was going to do. The hotkey is Control RR. So you hold down the control button and push R twice. Or you can right click and rename and it'll tell you there so that if you forget. And I think it's also an edit, advanced, edit, refactor, rename. Correct. One. I mean, I do want to continue streaming as often as I can, but I don't know that you're going to get the quality and the quantity that would be worth. I mean, unless you're not using anything else to get rid of commercials and that's what you're doing it for, then yeah, feel free. But you definitely don't have to. There is no requirement. I also don't want to feel pressured to to soft. Uh, if I miss a day because I'm just swamped, then I always feel bad because it's like there are people that have chosen to sub to this channel and I'm just letting people down. But yeah, if you want to get rid of commercials on Twitch, the better option is probably to get Turbo. Is that what it's called? It's a lot cheaper. Or the ad blocker thing, but I can't advocate for that. Yeah, it's pretty inexpensive. It's the price of 2 subs, essentially. You have Malwarebytes. Cool. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't really have content for you either. I don't have sub-specific content. Like, I have 2 amazing, what are these called? Emotes that Bob Ross made for us, which I'm really grateful for, and I think that they're cool. But that's all that I have. And then I have very few just other content for sub only. One day though. One day. Yeah, I like them too. I more than like them. I love them. I think they're really cool. Ooh, and my shoulder. Okay, so was there anything else that you wanted me to look at those Zuris? I think that if you apply that to just about all of your classes and the methods that you have in your classes, those should clean up your code quite a bit and help you feel more organized. These look fine though. Like it doesn't look like you're repeating very much code. And then you have methods in your data grid class that are specific to doing stuff with the data grid. This is pretty much like a decorator. One fun. Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here. One fun said, I still like the chatting though. Well, I like you too. I appreciate it. I should do more code reviews for stream. You're right. Absolutely. I mean, it's just that it's so subjective when it comes from me because I'm used to my style of coding, and so what I would tell you are experiences that I've had. I haven't done the research. I haven't done the academic work to say this is the right way to code. And so it's all just opinion. Dukasoft. Thank you, Dukasoft. Oh my gosh. What was a good video? 40 billion? 40 billion%? This is 40 billion, dude. And now you're off by he's off by 10. He's off by a factor of 10. Anyway, that'd be interesting to hear him talk. I'll have him on in the background. Go over here. Hang out with Finite. So Finite is also going on. He's over here on this other screen, whispering in my ear. Thindle's here! Hello, Thindle. That was really cool to see. 408 million times is 40 billion%. Okay, you're right, because that would be times 100, right? I see. It was really cool to see your progress on that editor. Who did what and why now? It goes from like 38 days to 0.000648 seconds. Do 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 do. I didn't actually see if Zuri's. Oh, Zuri's just said you still know more than me. But I bet you that there are a ton of things that you know more about than I do. Because that's how it works. I have very specialized knowledge because I am focused on very few things. Or I try to be focused on very few things. Like, I used to try to do it all. I have so many desires for what I want to do. I want to write music. I want to write stories. I want to play music. I want to do VR development. I want to do regular software development. I want to learn AI. I want to learn machine learning. I want to do all of the cloud related things. And yeah, I needed to pick. I needed to pick a select few. So one of them is full stack web development. And then the second one is XR Dev. So, speaking of, I finally am getting back to it. Time is the key. I'm finally getting back to this comment. Yesterday, I had the first meeting, or I attended my first meeting with a team at Sagetti that has been trying to pioneer the path forward for the metaverse. And now I'm a part of this group, and we already have a design challenge approach thing that we're pursuing. And I can't give details about it, but the point is that this group is hopefully going to be among the first, because I would like to see it go in the right direction, and I hope that this group can help it go in the right direction to define what the metaverse is. And I know that there have been talks since like 1970 about this concept of the metaverse, but like the actual manifestation of it, what it's going to be like, the experiences and how it's going to go, and the technology associated with it has not been fully defined. There is no standard definition, description, understanding of what the metaverse is. And even if there is nothing that has established precedent for how to continue developing for the metaverse. And so that's what this group is going to do. And I get to be a part of it, which is amazing, which means that I should be able to spend more time. Yeah. and Zuckerberg did throw lots and lots of money at it, but there is still no widely adopted, this is how you do the metaverse. This is what the metaverse is. But hopefully that means that I'll be able to spend more time, more resources on picking up the technologies associated with the metaverse, such as AR and VR. Metaverse Second Life sequel. So many people have that opinion. But yeah, I mean, it's still you can draw a lot of lessons learned and inspiration from Second Life. But like one of the big things is how do you tackle asset sharing? You you want the concept that when you enter an experience, you get to keep on your person, on your avatar, on your physical self that has digital assets overlaid, um, any of the assets that you gained from other experiences from different companies with different trademarks, with different IP issues. Ooh, what are properties exactly? So, real quick, just to give you a hopefully easy definition. No, you're okay. Absolutely, Zuris. Um, just to give you an hopefully easy way to identify what's a property and what is not a property. If you see get set or some version of this, whether it's just get by itself, whether it is get init, get private set, or the full property, which the easiest way to show you a full property is just to convert this thing to one. Oh my gosh, I can't push the right button. So a full property would be one that has the get method and set method fully described. Also get coffee. Don't forget to get coffee. There is no just set. Then you know that it's a property, regardless of whether it's public, internal, protected, whatever. As long as you see at least get. There is just a set? I didn't think so. I don't think so. Yeah. And so what Scott just said is there are two versions of properties, two ways that you can see it. This way here with the keywords get set, where this one is either nothing set, init, private set, internal set, some kind of modifier set. This is called an auto property. The one that has a backing variable, and a backing variable is a field, which we'll get to in a second. I already forgot what I pushed. Control dot full property. So this field here is what we're accessing using the get method and what we're setting using the set method. This is a full property because we're providing the implementation details for how to do the get, how to do the set. And so, yeah, and there are two ways that you can, like, you could use code snippets, which is a different thing, so we won't really get into that. But yes, Thindle was right. There is a set method as long as you do it with the full property version. And it's probably that, yeah, I've never seen this, and I don't know what use cases it would have, to be honest. Okay, so properties are things, are, oh my gosh, I can't think of a good word instead of things. I don't like the word things. Are ways to expose data held within a class to external classes or to external sources. So instead of needing to have a constructor here for my deposit entry view model, that you pass in the values for each of these. Maybe I'll do it like this. Pretty. Okay, instead of needing to create a whole bunch of either optional parameters being passed into this constructor or multiple constructors in order to set the values, you could create a new instance of this object and initialize these values as you're creating it using a property. And so now you're asking about fields. So you can tell a thing is a field when it doesn't have the get set. Type. This is a field. Since it's currently private, it's private by default. The typical naming convention is private fields will have an underscore camel case. And I generally explicitly state the visibility modifier. But anyway, you can have a private field and you can have a public field. I think underscores for old people, says Scott. I think it's for people that follow naming conventions. So anyway, if you're using a public field, then let's say that we were creating a new deposit entry view model, and we wanted to initialize the trans type. Apparently you can do that. I didn't think you'd be able to initialize public fields in this way. So I can tell you the difference between a property and a field, but I can't tell you why, at least why I prefer to use properties. And I rarely ever use fields, public fields. I almost always use private fields. I mean, yeah. Private fields is a given for me, but public fields, it probably has something to do with the way that they're stored in memory, would be my guess, and the way that you access them to make changes to them. But yeah, if you're sharing data from this class to other classes, then go the property route. I can't give you a good reason why. So if someone else does have a good reason why. The fields that I use that are public fields are usually events. Yeah, Funk. Sure. So Thindle is saying reflection works differently on variables versus properties. So if you rely on reflection, it's easier to use all properties. You can't data bind against a variable. Ooh. Against a field, you mean? And it's so you keep all of your public facing stuff the same. Yeah, so that's an interesting one. You can't. So let's put this one back here. Public, let's do target account, public string, target account, which is not the same name as the one down here. Okay, so let's say that I had this public property target account, a public field target account, and over here on my deposit entry page, I wanted to bind this to target account. I didn't get a compilation error. And I mean, I don't really have a way of telling whether it's binding or not other than printing it out maybe. Yeah, it's binding. So I don't know what that actually means. Binding. It's not the same binding as Blazor context, I'm assuming then. In MVVM. I mean, I'm for the most part using MVVM, so still don't quite know. So MVVM as the library, the what's it called? Community toolkit thing. Maybe, I don't know, unless there's something more specific. So the thing that I might guess then is what happens if you try to put an attribute on it. It still seems to work just fine. So essentially, a property is this. This is kind of hard to mock up because this would still be, yeah, there would be no this. Oh, actually, it would be more like this. Okay. Public void set some prop and public string get some prop. And I'm getting rid of the method expression as opposed to method body, just so you can see the difference. So when you do a property, you get all of this for free. And so this is a safer way to pass data to this class than directly setting a field for that class, I guess. So why would you want to use a backing field? There are a few reasons. In this case, my backing field just happens to be another property, but my full property is saying when you're getting the value for this target account value text, get the value of account ID and toString it. When you're setting the value of target account value text, set the value of account ID equal to the int version of the passed in string. One instance of why you would need it, or might need it. Another instance is, let's say that you have extra logic that you want to perform. You maybe want to transform the thing that you are passing in. You want to raise an event because you set this property's value, which is usually the case if you're doing notify property change kind of things. So you raise an event that says account or target account value text changed. So anyone listening for that event will handle the event and do whatever processing they need to do. Gonna bind some coffee. Coffee. Would you need to write those out anyway with a field? In those cases, yes. Do I have my shared? I don't. So I normally have a base notify property changes, I think is what I call it, which is an abstract class, abstract, that will implement both I notify property changed, I notify property changing, and then I would have some extra helper methods in here, such as in this, and we would actually get color member name like so. And so what would happen is when I create a new class and I'm doing and I'm doing a property for this class, I would have a backing field, private, let's just do a string, some field, or some prop is what it's going to be still. Even though it's a backing field, I'm going to call it some prop. And yeah, I guess. When I get the value, I get the backing field. When I set the value, I will set the backing field's value to whatever was passed in, to whatever we're trying to set it to, and then I will raise the event on property changed, which will let anyone know that's subscribed to property changed to that the property name some prop changed. So do something with that. And Scott says communitytoolkit.mvvm is the best. I haven't had an opportunity to use it. There's a lot of stuff that you get for free. Like they call them observables, but they're essentially the same logic. It's just the opposite, where it's like, have you changed? Here's my method to run when you have a change. And that's kind of what these are. Yeah. But anyway, I usually have the other method too. So give me on property changing. Give me set property. I love this. Oh man, this is so good. Yeah. So you also get the code gen from the MVVM. Yeah, so as far as describing what a property is and how that differs from a field, I don't know that I'd be able to give you a formal definition for that, but knowing how to identify whether a thing is a property or a field, that's what we discussed. But yeah, this is pretty much my standard base notify property change. It has changes. Base notify property changes. I don't know what I typically call it. I can't remember. But I put this on all of my state classes. So if when we get to the point of using state, then I would say that this thing would also do I notify property changed, I notify property changing. And when I implement this thing, then I would have it inherit from base notify property changes, comma. And now whenever I want to have a property be observed, then instead of just setting the value, I would do set field ref initialized, comma, value. And so what this will do is when I set the value for initialized, it'll raise an event that says property has changed. Or first it'll raise the property is changing, then set the value of initialized, and then property has changed. Do, do, comma space, close. And so this is good when you have a page maybe that's sitting and waiting for your state to initialize, but you don't want to just sit there and do await state.initialize. Instead, you're just listening for on notify property changed. So I guess we can have an example of this, a concrete example. Deposit data entry, deposit data entry, code behind. All right, so let's say that we have our lookup list state and we have an initialize. And instead of awaiting the initialize, we just fire and forget it for whatever reason. We could do lookup state dot on or dot notify property changes. Why aren't you giving me property changed? Lookup list state. You have I notify property change and I notify property changing, which means that you should have a dot notify property changed. Is it just property changed? Handle. Actually, I'm going to let it create it for me because lazy and I need to get going soon. Handle lookup list state changed. And so we do something like OA or just again fire and forget, invoke async, state is changed. Then what we're essentially doing is firing off a background process that says start initializing the lookup list state. I don't care when you finish or if you even finish, but when you change one of your property values, I want to know so that I can invoke async state is changed. And then of course, like this will be the case where if prop, are you just prop? E, e dot property name is name of lookup list state, I lookup list state dot initialized, then initialize the lists that I want it to initialize, but only after this thing has finished. And so this would be a cleaner way of, actually an even cleaner way of doing it would be this. Oh, and then we do this first. Oops. And so we say, just do this. And when you're finished, notify me of any property changes. If that property that changed happens to be the initialized, and look up list state dot initialized. Man, code code Copilot is doing a great job today. That's pretty crazy. So if the property that changed is initialized and we are changing initialized to true, or have changed initialized to true, then initialize my account and deposit reasons. That's fun. We just did that. Okay, so anyway, as I mentioned at the top, Thindle does have some questions. Thindle said, serious question, view model definition, class, or interface? Both. Interface to define it, class to implement it. I don't know what you mean. Maybe my brain went bad at some point, but I thought the .NET convention was with interfaces. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, view models themselves, not really. You can. I've seen a bunch of places where you do, but typically a view model, well, not an MVVM, a pure view model is a POCO that only has properties with no logic. It's just a transformed view of something that you of data that you get from somewhere that is used on in the UI. And typically, you're instantiating this as you need it. The way that I've seen view models in MVVM work is they also have helper methods for hydrating them, and you dependency inject the view model itself into the views that use them. And so I'm still trying to wrap my head around that because I use services for hydrating view models. And yeah, it breaks my brain a little bit. So I typically use a POCO for my view model and then a service to hydrate the view model. My current customer uses abstract classes. Yeah, and abstract classes, again, are also okay to use. Typically, you use one or the other, not both, because you can still do dependency injection in a similar way. There's probably something about abstract classes that your customer likes more, like having the built-in the definition of the hydration methods, for example, in your abstract class. And then have them all be overridable, but it still provides a base implementation. Where interfaces, you don't have that base implementation. Speaking of malware, Xamarin or WPF. Yeah, true. So here's an example of a view model page. Yeah, so you have all of these observable properties so that if we change is empty with a capital I in the page, in the form or wherever, then we will get a notification that the property has changed. And then this will generate some code for you. I have no idea what my hands are implementing. I must be doing something right. The idea is that a view model should have zero idea what UI is used to display it, though. True. Yeah, and my view model doesn't care about what UI is displaying it. It just cares that it's a container for data that is transformed. So it's not the data model that we get back from an API call. It's not the data model that we get back from a database query. It is a transformed or projected version of that that will be used. Yeah, and then I love these I commands too. Set them up as button clicks, and yeah, so it's like I know the concept of using the community toolkit, and I know it has so many helpers like this that are bindable properties, and yeah. I haven't had a need for it since I'm doing everything in Blazor. Even my Maui stuff I'm doing with Blazor UI. So yeah. But yeah, mine are pretty much more pure object. But as I mentioned, I mean, I went longer than I expected to, so I hope I'm still going to be able to get this stuff done. Um, but I have to put some screens together, so I'm going to end the stream early. We're going to hop on over to Finite, but I really do appreciate all of you being here. You are amazing people. Keep being amazing. Keep being positive influences on just the internet community. All of the developers that I've encountered on Twitch are just so cool. This community is the best. I wasn't able to do it using my that thing, so I'm doing it that way. Okay, so we will head over to Finite though. I will be back again on Friday for Community Day, where I will invite any number of you to hop into our Discord voice channel that Dukasoft posted for us, which is awesome. Definitely feel free to check out all of our community streamers. For example, Bendel. For example, Xcoding. Is there anyone else? Or whenever Deflux starts streaming, and is there anyone else in here that is a streamer that wants a shout out? I mean, they're lame shout outs. They're just let me click on your channel, go and follow you. But yeah, we're heading over to someone that I love watching while I am working through my normal day. But yeah, Friday, Community Day. We'll go the full time most likely. I don't have any meetings scheduled, but that's going to be it for me for today. My videos get posted to YouTube 24 hours after the end of the stream, if I remember to get everything set up. Okay, that's all. I'll talk with you all later. Cheers.